What up, though? This is Dwayne Barnes. I want to welcome you to the IdeaXchange Podcast, presented by Social Tech. I'm here to share my ideas, opinions, and perspectives on current events through a social, economic, and tech lens. You know, I once heard the saying that small minds discuss people, average minds discuss events, and great minds discuss ideas. For the purposes of this podcast, I'll be doing a little bit of three, but I love the space where the ideas live. You know, I believe in the power of ideas. One of my favorite philosophers, musicians, and activists, Tupac Shakur, famously affirmed the power of ideas, saying, I might not be the one to change the world, but I will spark the mind of the person who will. That spark was the idea. And ideas are like seeds. They need to be planted. This is a space where ideas live, where they're shared, and where they're cultivated. So using that people, event, idea kind of analysis, let's jump into our first topic, which is the NBA protests from last week and the social, economic, and tech nuances of the protest. So you won't be hearing about the score of the game or, who had the highest point total or where everybody is standing in the bubble. This is more about the kind of ancillary issues around it. So last Wednesday, the Milwaukee Bucks refused to take the court to play their playoff game against the Orlando Magic. I'm down in Orlando in the bubble. And this was a direct response to the shooting of Jacob Blake by a police officer in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Not to be outdone, the NBA followed suit and postponed the playoff games for the rest of that week and didn't resume again until last Saturday, which was the 29th of August. After the players and the NBA met to agree upon a few of the players' demands around, voting access and putting more pressure on the Wisconsin Attorney General to prosecute the officer that shot Jacob Blake in the back 7 times. So that's kind of the people in the event. Now let's get a little bit more into the idea. So for me, the idea, which is always kind of the larger notion that drives the thing, is the idea of justice. I mean, like countless others in the fight for social, economic, and civil rights, the NBA players wanted justice in this instance. Justice for those men and women who died at the hands of police. Justice for those suffering under the scrutiny of poverty, and justice for those that the American system has continually oppressed and forgot about. Pro athletes are taking center stage in the fight for freedom, and doing so with a seemingly well-meaning business partner. So, the NBA has a not-so-distant history with social justice activism since around 2010. Better yet, let's start at 2014 with the Donald Sterling situation. So in 2014, billionaire owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, Donald Sterling, was caught on tape using racial slurs and then eventually was forced to sell the team. That same year, the NBA began its Martin Luther King Day programming, sharing the rich history, contributions of activism and politics and economics of African Americans. So they were getting a little more warm to that idea. And 2016 was a crossroad year for the NBA and activism because of the polarizing national anthem protest by Colin Kaepernick in the NFL, which was a lightning rod. NBA players led by LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony, and CP3 were poised to support the movement with the I Can't Breathe t-shirts and taking part in their famed ESPY moment from that year. The ESPY Awards, they gave a stirring speech on rights and social justice and how they wanted to their mark in it. 2020 brought a new wind to the protest movement with the coronavirus and the postponement of the NBA season, followed by the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the subsequent protests around the world. NBA players were playing their part. They were directly involved in these protests, organizing, leading the charge for racial justice during the spring and summer of 2020. Moreover, as the league planned to return, in addition to the financial incentives, The players made sure that adding a social justice component was imperative to the negotiations. And a couple examples of that is the NBA painted Black Lives Matter on every court out there. They allowed for the players to wear jerseys with a message on the back, a social justice message. And they also allowed for warm-ups to reflect the players want to find and prosecute the gentleman who walked into Breonna Taylor's home. So it was an opportunity for them to share their platform to the issues that were most important to them. The economic side of the protest is, I think, the most intriguing part to me. So the immediate economic implication of canceling games, with your media partners and your sponsors, your advertisers who have, spots in this game while the game is on. What are the implications of that? What are the implications of the owners, the players, and the staff salaries? People were paid to be there. People were paid to be to work, and they couldn't. Another more interesting economic implication is that of the sponsors and brands that the NBA, the players, and the individual teams have. How does a corporate entity like McDonald's feel about their premier athletes standing up for social justice? How does Disney and Turner, the broadcast partners, State Farm, Pepsi, AB InBev, huge partners of the NBA, how do they play this? Do they go along to get along like many brands during the BLM movement? We saw brands from around the Fortune 500, support Black Lives Matter, at least in tone, and say they were putting money away and this is a very important issue. Or will there be financial repercussions for all parties involved? In addition, how will the ratings and viewership of the NBA play out in the era of social justice? In our society, we like to disconnect sports from real life as if you can, as a way of not dealing with it. So, the NFL suffered a ratings dip from people who didn't want to see Colin Kaepernick kneel. And then on the other side, they got a ratings dip from people who wanted to see Colin Kaepernick back in the NFL. So over a couple of years, they were having to deal with, the economic ramifications of taking a stance in these polarizing times. And, the 2019-2020 season has been rough for the NBA. The league year started with an impasse with China over free speech. Some NBA players and some executives, specifically, in the Houston Rockets organization, lended their support to the anti-government protests that were going on in Hong Kong last year. And this created a big impasse between these two business partners, which resulted in the NBA losing, some of its foothold that has been building for the last, 15 years in China over some of these concerns. The NBA player protest is another kind of issue around that, and being out of missing the majority of your season for the pandemic. Now, the tech implications of the NBA player protest is unique as well. The NBA player protest caught the world's attention on both social and traditional media. On a night where the 2020 Republican National Convention was going on, we had tropical storms heading to our southern shores, and the NBA players and their protests took the top story. NBA protests trended online with thousands of posts, shares, retweets, comments, likes, etc. Think pieces were written, talking heads speculated, and the sports world responded as well. Other leagues like the WNBA, the MLB, and tennis followed suit and canceled their games to honor the moment of the protest. So my final thought on this is this. One, I support the players and in their fight for social justice. I admire the courage and commitment to put your financial future on the line for your beliefs. The new athlete is a consummate professional, savvy business person, and an activist, leaving the shut up and dribble or stick to sports monikers to rest and create a new narrative around economics, opportunity, justice, and activism. This is Dwayne Barnes, and this is episode 1 of the IdeaXchange Podcast. Peace.